today we're on track for a new record, even by those lofty standards. Veteran tech boss Larry Ellison, founder and top shareholder of software giant Oracle, has seen his net worth soar by $70 billion in one day.
What if I told you that a single tech CEO could make more money in 1 year than the combined salaries of tens of thousands of employees? And sometimes, even when their companies lose billions, their paychecks barely take a hit. This is the world of tech CEO payouts. And today we'll break it down into 5 shocking levels, from the so-called modest millionaires to the untouchables who have built fortunes beyond imagination. Let's get into it. Level 1 begins with CEOs who, by Silicon Valley standards, look modest. Their annual compensation is in the tens of millions of dollars. For you and me, it's unimaginable wealth. But in the cutthroat world of tech, these payouts are considered the low tier. Take Intel's CEO Pat Gelsinger. In 2021, when Intel was desperately trying to reclaim its place in the semiconductor race against AMD and Nvidia, Gelsinger took home a jaw-dropping $179 million in compensation. But after a brutal 2022 to 2023, where Intel's market value tumbled by nearly 50%, his 2023 compensation dropped to around $16.9 million. That's still over 500 times the average Intel employee's pay. And this is where perspective matters. Even though Gelsinger's paycheck shrank by over 90%, he still earned more in a year than most people would in several lifetimes. Another case is AMD's Lisa Su, one of the most respected executives in the chip industry. In 2022, she made $30.3 million. But here's the twist. AMD wasn't struggling. In fact, it was growing rapidly, eating into Intel's dominance. Under Su, AMD's stock had risen nearly 3,000% since 2014. So, unlike Gelsinger's payout, Su's multi-million-dollar compensation came during a clear growth phase, when AMD became the preferred chipmaker for gamers, data centers, and even AI. So while Lisa Su was rewarded for pulling AMD back from the brink of bankruptcy, Gelsinger's payout highlights a darker side. CEOs can still take home massive pay, even when their companies are losing ground. And that's the essence of Level 1. These are the CEOs who, compared to their peers, appear to be modestly compensated, but still walk away with tens of millions, whether their companies are sinking or soaring. Level 2 is where things start to get controversial. These CEOs tie the bulk of their earnings to stock performance, meaning their paychecks can skyrocket when the stock is up, but barely budge when it's down. The poster child here is Tim Cook of Apple. In 2022, Cook made headlines with a compensation package worth nearly $99.4 million. But in early 2023, Apple lost nearly $1 trillion in market value, with its stock plunging from a peak of around $182 per share in January 2022 to $126 by January 2023. Despite this historic loss, Cook's earnings remained astronomical, cushioned by stock awards and performance bonuses. And this raises a serious question. Should a CEO still earn close to $100 million when their company just had one of the biggest valuation losses in stock market history? Tim Cook isn't alone. Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, famously takes just a $1 annual salary. Sounds humble, right? But don't be fooled. Almost all of Zuckerberg's wealth comes from his Meta stock holdings, which at times have been valued at over $100 billion. When Meta's stock crashed nearly 70% in 2022 due to the metaverse gamble, Zuckerberg personally lost around $71 billion on paper. But even with that hit, he remains one of the richest people alive. Here's the twist. Even when companies lose value, these CEOs aren't exactly losing. Their fortunes fluctuate with the market, but the compensation structures are designed to keep them massively wealthy regardless. Another example? Sundar Pichai of Alphabet, Google's parent company. In 2022, Pichai received a $226 million compensation package, most of it in stock grants. Meanwhile, Alphabet was laying off over 12,000 employees in early 2023, citing cost cuts. The optics couldn't be worse, a CEO walking away with hundreds of millions while thousands of workers lost their livelihoods. So, Level 2 shows us how CEO pay is heavily tied to stock performance. But the irony is this. Even when stocks collapse or employees suffer, these payouts barely slow down. It's the double-edged sword of the tech world. When the stock soars, they win. When it crashes, they still win, just not as much. Level 3 is reserved for the rare breed of CEOs who step in when a company is on the ropes and somehow turn things around. These leaders often walk away with legendary paydays, not just because of their base salary, but because they restored billions, sometimes trillions, in shareholder value. Take Satya Nadella at Microsoft. When he became CEO in 2014, Microsoft was losing ground. Its stock had stagnated, hovering around $37 per share. But Nadella doubled down on cloud computing with Azure, pivoting the company's future. Fast forward to today, and Microsoft's stock sits above $400 per share, pushing the company's valuation beyond $3 trillion in 2024, making it the most valuable company in the world at the time. Nadella's compensation package in 2022? Around $54.9 million, mostly tied to performance. And many argue he earned every cent. This isn't just a paycheck. It's a reward for saving Microsoft from irrelevance and turning it into a market leader again. Another comeback king is Jensen Huang, the leather jacket-wearing CEO of NVIDIA. Back in the early 2010s, NVIDIA was primarily seen as a graphics card company with limited growth prospects. But Huang had a vision, pivoting to AI and data center chips. By 2023, that vision turned NVIDIA into a juggernaut, with its market cap surpassing $1 trillion for the first time. Huang's pay package for 2023? Over $34 million. Not the highest on this list, but when you consider the wealth he created for shareholders, including himself, it's staggering. And here's the kicker. Huang owns about 3.6% of NVIDIA, which translates to more than $90 billion in personal wealth. His paycheck is almost irrelevant compared to the equity. Then there's Lisa Su at AMD. In 2014, AMD was on the verge of collapse, with its stock trading under $2 per share. Su transformed the company with next-gen processors, challenging Intel directly. By 2021, AMD stock had surged to nearly $160 per share, lifting the company's market cap over $180 billion. Her compensation in 2019 alone spiked to $58.5 million, reflecting the company's dramatic turnaround. Level 3 CEOs prove one thing. The market does reward results. Their payouts may look massive, but in many cases, they're a fraction of the value they brought back from the dead. But this level also poses a question. If turnarounds are rewarded so heavily, what happens when companies are already at the top? In this level, we're looking at CEOs who build empires. These are leaders who take already massive businesses and expand them into global powerhouses, often earning payouts that make headlines around the world. Think Jeff Bezos at Amazon. By the time he stepped down as CEO in 2021, Amazon had become a trillion-dollar company, employing more than 1.3 million people worldwide. Bezos famously took a modest $81,840 salary every year, unchanged since the late 1990s. But don't be fooled. His real wealth came from his Amazon stock, which made him worth over $200 billion at his peak. Bezos may not have had the flashiest salary, but he was the richest man alive because of how Amazon dominated e-commerce, cloud computing, and even streaming. So here's the irony. Bezos' paycheck was tiny compared to most CEOs, but his empire made him wealthier than nearly anyone else in history. Now take Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. In 2018, Tesla's board approved what's often called the largest CEO compensation package in history, worth up to $55.8 billion, entirely tied to hitting performance milestones. Critics called it absurd. But by 2021, Tesla's market value skyrocketed past $1 trillion, and Musk unlocked huge chunks of that payout. Whether you admire him or not, the results were undeniable. Musk essentially turned Tesla into one of the most valuable car companies in the world, while also running SpaceX, which is now valued at over $180 billion. Level 5 is where CEO payouts stop being about performance, growth, or even logic. This is the stage where paychecks are so massive, so insulated from reality, that they exist in a league of their own. Take Tim Cook at Apple. In 2022, Apple's market cap briefly crossed the $3 trillion mark, making it the first company in history to do so. Yet, by 2023, Apple lost $1 trillion in value during a market downturn. Did Cook's pay shrink to reflect that? Not at all. This is what makes Level 5 controversial. CEOs at this stage are rewarded regardless of whether their companies stumble or thrive. Level 5 CEOs have something no other level enjoys: insulation. They're untouchable. Boards bend rules, investors look the other way, and paychecks keep flowing, even if companies lose billions. The result? An ecosystem where the gap between leadership and workers widens every year. From struggling survivors to empire builders. And finally, the untouchables, the 5 levels of CEO payouts reveal a system that's as fascinating as it is flawed.